The year is 1656, the city is Rome, and you are dying of the plague. You have been locked in your house for 6 days. Your family is not allowed in. Your neighbors nailed the door shut. And then, at dusk, you hear the boards being pried away, and a shape steps into the room. A long black coat, shining with wax down to the ankles, heavy gloves, a wide-brimmed hat, and where a face should be, a long white beak, staring at you through 2 round glass eyes. You should be screaming, but this is the best news you have had all week, because this is the plague doctor, and he is the only person in the city who is paid to walk toward what everyone else is running from. Start with the obvious question. Why the beak? The answer is that medicine, at this point, had the wrong villain. Doctors believed plague traveled as miasma, poisoned air. Bad smells were not just unpleasant, they were the disease itself, drifting invisibly out of swamps, corpses, and sick rooms. Breathe the stink, catch the plague. That was the theory. And if bad air is the enemy, the fix writes itself. Fill your air with something better. So the beak was not a costume piece, it was a gas mask. The long nose cone was packed like a tiny pharmacy, dried roses and lavender, mint, cloves, camphor, sponges soaked in vinegar, sometimes a smouldering pinch of incense. Every breath the doctor took was pulled through a foot of perfume. The idea was simple. By the time the deadly sick room air reached his lungs, the sweetness would have scrubbed the poison out of it. He was not hiding his face, he was filtering the world. Here is the twist that makes the whole outfit tragic and brilliant at the same time. The theory was completely wrong, and the suit worked anyway. Plague did not ride on smells. It rode on fleas. Fleas leaping off dying rats, biting one victim after the next. And what does a flea find when it lands on a plague doctor? No skin. A full-length coat of leather or canvas rubbed stiff with wax, gloves, boots, a hat, and a mask with not a gap on the whole man. The waxed surface was smooth, slick, and nearly impossible to cling to. These men had accidentally invented head-to-toe protective gear 3 centuries before anyone knew what it was protecting them from. Wrong reason. Right armour. The outfit even has an inventor with a name. Charles de Lorme, personal physician to the French royal family, is credited with designing the full costume in 1619. The waxed coat, the beak, all of it. It spread from France through Italy the way the plague itself spread, city by city, until the beaked silhouette became part of every major outbreak. Which means the creepiest mask in history was, in its own day, cutting-edge medical equipment, designed at the top of the profession. Then there is the cane. Every plague doctor carried one, a long thin wand, and it was not for walking. The cane was for touching the world so his hands never had to. He lifted a patient's shirt with it. He took a pulse by pressing it to a wrist. He pointed with it to direct the family, turned bodies with it, and when desperate crowds pressed too close, he kept them at exactly 1 cane's length. Some patients were examined, diagnosed, and dosed without the doctor's glove ever once touching their skin. In a century with no idea what contagion really was, the plague doctor had already worked out the first rule of it: distance. Now for the part nobody expects. Most plague doctors were not really doctors. When plague entered a city, the famous physicians, the ones with wealthy patients and university chairs, very sensibly left town. Cities were left with a staffing problem and solved it with money. They hired community plague doctors on public contracts, young medics with no patience, foreign practitioners, ambitious barber surgeons, sometimes men with no medical training at all. One surviving contract from the city of Pavia offers a plague doctor a generous monthly salary from the public purse, free lodging, and even the promise of citizenship. Provided he treats plague victims and nobody else. The pay was spectacular because the job description was, in plain terms, stay in the one place everyone with options has just abandoned. And the daily work was grimmer than the mask. The plague doctor lanced buboes, the swollen black lumps of the disease, and drained them, which probably did more harm than good. He bled patients, applied leeches, and prescribed remedies that ranged from useless to genuinely unhinged, including one that involved strapping a live chicken to the swelling. But some of his real work mattered in a different way. Plague doctors counted. They recorded the dead for the city registers, house by house, so officials could watch the outbreak move like weather. And because they were often the only outsiders allowed near the dying, they witnessed wills. Thousands of families kept their inheritances because a man in a beak stood at a deathbed and signed as the law required. Half physician, half public servant, half notary. The plague doctor was the city's last functioning official in the streets everyone else had fled. It was, predictably, one of the deadliest jobs in Europe. The suit helped, but it was not a miracle. In the great outbreak of 1348, the city of Venice counted its physicians afterwards. Of 24, all but a handful were dead or gone. Plague doctors were locked out of ordinary life, much like our sin-eaters and gong farmers. Quarantined by contract, forbidden from mixing with the healthy, feared by the same crowds who depended on them. The beak that protected them also marked them. When people saw it in the street, they did not think help has arrived. They thought death is in the neighborhood and crossed themselves. And here is the final myth to break. The image in your head is from the wrong plague. The beaked suit was invented in 1619, nearly 300 years after the Black Death. The doctors of 1348, the ones facing the deadliest pandemic in human history, had no beaks, no glass eyes, no waxed coats. They walked into those rooms in ordinary robes with nothing but a pomander of herbs and their own nerve. The famous costume belongs to the plague's long, grinding sequel in the 1600s. It survived the disease itself. When the outbreaks finally faded, the beak walked straight off the sickroom floor and into the Venice Carnival, where it is still dancing today, 300 years later, as a party mask. The uniform of history's grimmest job became a souvenir. So that is the man behind the mask, the beak. The wrong theory, worn with total confidence. The waxed coat. The right armour for reasons nobody understood. The cane. The first social distancing. The contract. Spectacular pay to stand where no one else would. Strip away the horror film silhouette, and the plague doctor is something stranger than a monster. He is what a society looks like when it refuses to completely give up, wearing the best guess it had. And if you want more forgotten jobs, strange deaths, and the history they skipped in school, that is what this channel does. Subscribing takes one click, no beak required.